Good morning, everyone. My name is Dave Booker, and I have the privilege of serving as Dean of the College of Arts and Sciences here at UNO. And on behalf of UNO, I want to welcome you to this very special event. This past May, Chuck Hagel approached UNO's administration about hosting a conference commemorating the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War. The result, as you can see from your program, is nothing short of spectacular in its historic importance. Secretary Hagel's vision was clear from the beginning: to explore the lessons and legacies of the Vietnam War. As he wrote, as you can see in your program, the Vietnam War changed America. Our symposium explores in depth the ways that the war shaped American society and how American society was shaped by the war in its politics, foreign policy, culture, music and literature, medicine, immigration, media, and through tensions between protest and patriotism. On behalf of everyone involved in developing and planning this historic event, I want to personally thank each and every one of you who have come from far and wide to share your lives and experiences during the war and after. We all owe you and all veterans a tremendous debt of gratitude for your service, and we thank you for your willingness to share your experiences. Before we begin our program, I want to thank all of the symposium's sponsors: Kiewit, Gallup, Humanities Nebraska, Union Pacific, Mr. Charles Michael, the University of Nebraska at Omaha. I also want to point out that in the lobby there is a table where I invite all Vietnam-era veterans to approach the table and receive a commemorative pin. UNO has become a partner with the United States of America Vietnam War Commemoration, which was formed by a presidential proclamation on May 25, 2012. The commemoration established a program designed to thank and honor veterans of the Vietnam War, both veterans of the war and those on the home front, and to recognize sacrifices made by the allies of the United States. When you registered, you received a packet. Inside that packet, there are some cards, some note cards that you can write questions on. If you have questions, please pass the cards to the center aisle, and someone will be there to collect them, and we'll get those on stage. I'm sure there will be a lot of questions, and unfortunately we will not be able to answer all of them. There is also a flyer in there to talk about the panel, your experiences with the panel. If you would fill that out and return it to the registration desk, there will be a basket for you to place it in. John Christensen serves as the 14th Chancellor of the University of Nebraska, Omaha. Chancellor Christensen has led UNO through a tremendous period of transformation, arguably the most successful 10-year period in the history of our great university. Chancellor Christensen, thank you for your service to UNO and to the Omaha community. Please welcome Chancellor John Christensen.
Good morning. Good morning. I want to thank all of you for joining us in today's Lessons and Legacies Symposium. David, I also want to thank you for the kind introduction, and also to you and all who have contributed to bringing this significant event to reality. I also want to add my thanks to those in the community, organizations, and individuals who contributed to support this very special event. Please know it's an absolute honor to host this symposium at the University of Nebraska at Omaha in our Strauss Performing Arts Center. Now, for those of you that may not have had the opportunity to visit UNO, I hope that you'll find a little bit of time to explore the places and the spaces that we call home. Today, we are here to reflect on and to discuss the impact of the Vietnam War. We'll hear from reporters, a leader from Nebraska's Vietnamese community, faculty, staff, doctors, poets, and of course, women and men who served our country. Nearly all of the panels feature veterans of the Vietnam War. Just as this war changed Vietnam and America, I believe we will hear how the war has also impacted the lives of our veterans. On that note, I would be remiss if I didn't take some time to let you know what we're doing at UNO to support military-affiliated students. I am proud to tell you that supporting military and veteran students is a campus priority. Our current efforts are built on a very rich history of serving our community as a military-friendly university. It was back in 1951, UNO became one of the first universities in the nation to institute the Bootstrap program, which provided access to higher education for those returning from World War II. UNO graduated thousands, literally thousands, through the duration of the Bootstrap program back in those days. Today, more than 10% of our students are veterans or military-affiliated women and men. For the last 2 years, the Military Times has ranked UNO the best four-year university in the nation serving military and veteran students, most of whom spent their time in Afghanistan or Iraq. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Secretary Hagel, who is a UNO Bootstrapper alum. I'm not sure that you may have known that. But I would like to thank him for making this event possible today. Also, I would personally want to thank Secretary Hagel for his leadership and support of our country. He has been a great friend to our country, to our campus, and we're proud to call him a maverick. Of course, there are many ways to learn, and I expect we'll all leave today feeling significantly more informed as we reflect on the different areas life was impacted by the war. This symposium would not be possible without the speakers we have today, who have so generously volunteered to share their thoughts, their ideas, and their feelings, or without all of you who made time to participate in these important conversations. In closing, I firmly believe this is an historically important event, and I'm very proud that it's being held on our campus. So thank you all for coming. And now it is my privilege to introduce Dean Lewis Pohl, who will in turn introduce our first panel of the day. Thank you very much for being here.
Have to figure out where we're sitting. So good morning, and welcome to our panel, Vietnam and U.S. Relations in the 21st Century. What we're going to hear from our speakers this morning is relationships and relations from different perspectives. The first perspective was originally planned to come from Ambassador Vin, but Ambassador Vin is busy with Secretary Kerry and others in Washington and New York talking about trade policies and other items that are very important in the U.S.-Vietnam partnership. But we're very fortunate to have his counselor and Chief Economic Officer, Mr. Tien Lee, with us today. Tien, thank you. Thank you for being here. Our second panelist is on the left there, and this is Dr. Charles Fritz Kraft. Dr. Kraft is the dental health director for the state of Nebraska, but he's also the founder of the East Meets West dental program in Da Nang, Vietnam. Dr. Fritz has been traveling to Vietnam since 1992, and he has 75-plus visits at this point, and will give us a perspective from a long-term relationship through the eyes of an NGO. The third presenters are Doctors Kathy Koh and Jonna Holland. Kathy is a professor of economics in the College of Business at UNO. Jonna Holland is an associate professor of marketing. And their perspective is also from an NGO, but it's a merger between NGO, entrepreneurship, and a lot of difficulties and possibilities for a program that's just getting off the ground. So what we're going to do first is show a video that the ambassadors shared with us, and then we'll start with the panel members. But this is a panel. If you don't send us questions, then there won't be any discussion. So please think about what you're hearing, write some things down on the cards, and send them forward. So without any more delay, Fritz?
Thank you. As Ambassador of Vietnam to the U.S., may I extend the warmest greetings to Nebraska and to you all. I regret I could not be here in person, which I very much love to. Earlier, I had the honor to talk with Secretary Chuck Hager about this symposium and about our two countries' relations, and he has been a great source of inspiration. So I thank Secretary Hager for such rearrangement for me to have this video talk today. The war indeed had been so much painful for our peoples and everybody. For us, Vietnam, we were forced to defend our nation with untold sufferings, and the painful legacies of war persist until today. As we look back, we thank all those on both sides who had worked hard for ending the war, healing the wounds of war, for reconciliation and promotion of our relations. All these had helped bring about the normalization of our diplomatic relations announced by President Clinton in 1995, which started a new chapter in our relationship. So, just within the span of 21 years since 1995, we have indeed come a long way in our relations, from foes to friends and to comprehensive partners. Vietnam's General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trong recently observed, 20 years ago, few people could imagine how Vietnam and the U.S. could overcome the pains of war and be in a relationship of positive and vigorous development as that of today. Secretary Kerry also recognized no other two countries have worked harder, better in doing so. So today, Vietnam and the U.S., we have solid foundations for stronger partnership bilaterally and beyond. Last year, 2015, as we commemorated 20 years of our diplomatic relations, General Secretary Nguyen Phu Trong paid a first ever historic visit to the U.S. And this year, 2016, President Obama visited Vietnam. Our partnership has been further strengthened and raised to a new high. In political ties, we have increased high-level exchanges and deepened our comprehensive partnership on the basis of mutual respect and benefit, including the respect of each other's political system. Trade and economic cooperation has always been a key pillar in our relations, which has increased 100 times since 1995 to now 50 billion US dollars. And we have even greater potential for trade and economic ties, especially in the context of the TPP. All countries need to work hard to sustain the TPP, which is of both strategic and economic importance regionally. In defense and security, we have further advanced cooperation as outlined in the Joint Vision Statement of 2015 and the MOU of 2011, including in the areas of maritime security, search and rescue, disaster relief, and peacekeeping. Vietnam welcomed the total lifting of the arms embargo. We will further our cooperation as a priority in addressing the war legacies, including the MIA issue and the clearance of USO and dioxin remediation in Vietnam, including the new project at Bien Hoa Airport. We shall further increase people-to-people ties, including the areas of tourism and education. We shall work together to facilitate the establishment of the Fulbright University in Vietnam. Vietnam also welcomes U.S. assistance in helping Vietnam dealing with climate change and the sea level rise in the Mekong Delta bilaterally as well as within the Lower Mekong Initiative. We will continue to increase our cooperation at regional and global levels, including within the ASEAN-related forums on issues of mutual concern, from natural disaster, climate change, water security, maritime security, to pandemics, healthcare, and wildlife. We support the maintenance of peace, maritime security, and freedom of navigation in the South China Sea, the peaceful settlement of disputes, and the respect of international law, especially the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS. In conclusion, I wish you all to have fruitful discussion at this symposium. On my part, I do believe that Vietnam and the U.S. will have solid foundations to strengthen further our comprehensive partnership. Next year, 2017, Vietnam will be hosting the APEC, and we certainly look forward to welcoming your next president. Thank you.
Testing. Good morning. My name is Dr. Charles F. Kraft. The following story is an example of how several U.S.-based non-governmental organizations have been instrumental in helping to reestablish partnerships, credibility, and trust between the people of Vietnam and the United States, while creating developmental opportunities for the disadvantaged people living there following the war. The Vietnam War escalated with the official U.S. Marine landing in Da Nang in 1965 and ended with the evacuation in Saigon in 1975, killing 3 million people, including 58,000 Americans. But the war affected all Vietnamese and all American citizens. I grew up south of Lincoln, Nebraska, attended Norris High School. My classmates were emotionally devastated when our former homecoming king, Lieutenant Ralph Lee Church, U.S. Army Ranger, was killed in action near Phu Bai in 1971. After a decade of war, the Vietnam countryside was physically devastated, especially the central region of rural provinces where much of the fighting had occurred. The economic, transportation, educational, healthcare systems were also destroyed. After 1975, Vietnam was plunged into international isolation for the next 20 years. In 1980, I graduated from the University of Nebraska Dental College and began my career in public health dentistry. I later served with the U.S. Army in Operation Enduring Freedom, Afghanistan, but I went to Vietnam as a civilian. In 1988, the U.S.-based East Meets West Foundation was founded in California by Lê Ly Hayslip, a Vietnamese woman from a small village of Qui La near Da Nang, who married an American serviceman during the war and moved to the United States. She authored 2 best-selling books about Vietnam, and Oliver Stone's movie Heaven and Earth was based on her life story. The purpose of this NGO was to improve the health and welfare of the Vietnamese people, especially those who had been victims of the armed conflict. Relations between the United States and Vietnam began to ease in 1990 when the United States Agency for International Development started to support programs that benefited Vietnamese with disabilities. In 1992, Washington lifted the ban on U.S. travel to Vietnam. That same year, I obtained a visa to visit the reopened country and hired a driver to travel from Ho Chi Minh City up Highway 1 to Hanoi. What I saw at that time was very disturbing. There were still many signs of suffering, an obvious lack of essential human needs like clean water, sanitation, health care, especially in the villages and hamlets. Hospitals function only in larger cities, but they had a shocking lack of adequate doctors, instruments, and supplies. Little dental care could be found. People seemed to be existing. Children were not smiling. There was little hope for the future. In 1992, East Meets West was allowed to establish an overseas office for humanitarian activities in Da Nang in coordination with the Vietnam Red Cross. In 1993, they received a grant from USAID to construct the Village of Hope, which was a shelter and safe haven for hundreds of destitute children who were orphaned or living in poverty. Other grassroots projects soon started to include the installation of village water systems, building primary and secondary schools, constructing small bridges, and a heart defect program. In those early years, it was really just a handful of aid workers that were representing our country. In 1994, the trade embargo was lifted by President Clinton. I returned for a second visit to discuss the possibility of starting a humanitarian dental project with East Meets West. The country director, Mark Conroy, was the first American to be allowed to live back in Da Nang after the war. He had 2 brothers that served in Vietnam, and he himself had served with the Peace Corps. In 1995, normalization of relations between our country was announced. This opened up the opportunity to bring $250,000 worth of donated American equipment, instruments, and supplies directly to Vietnam. Air freight transportation was donated by Federal Express, a company that was started by Mr. Frederick Smith, a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who served south of Da Nang in the area of Chu Lai in 1967 and again in 1969. In 1996, the equipment arrived in Da Nang, and a local staff of skilled Vietnamese dentists were trained to operate a small children's dental health program in the Peace Village Medical Clinic, which was located next to the old Marine Air Base near Marble Mountain. The clinic was dedicated to the memory of Lieutenant Church. East Meets West then began to work with health officials and dentists from the National University in Ho Chi Minh City to treat thousands of poor children who were blind, deaf, physically disabled, mentally handicapped, or living in the streets. It was a humbling experience. Modern dentistry was adapted to a local form of education, prevention, corrective, and emergency care services, utilizing available local resources. Vietnam officials were initially wary of foreign contact with school children and required strict surveillance, but our care was well received by the directors of numerous children's centers, and after seeing our Vietnamese staff fairly treated, the excellent patient results, and our promises kept, the bitterness of resentment began to fade, and the healing relationships were being firmly reestablished. The dental program grew over the years through funding help from Colgate Vietnam, McDonald's Charity, the Ross Foundation, and many individual donors. It expanded to include a new city dental clinic, a school dental trailer, and an outreach program that takes portable dental equipment into the remote hamlets to provide patient services directly on site. For many residents in these outlying areas, this was their first interaction with Americans and dental care since the U.S. Marines had conducted friendly village medical missions during their combined action program events back in the 60s. Vietnamese authorities have allowed us to now perform over 150 outreach trips in 6 central provinces with village locations near the southern city of Can Tho, eastern to Kon Tum, and up to Dong Ha. Over the next 2 decades, I came back to Vietnam more than 75 times, along with nearly 1,250 international dental volunteers and students from over 30 countries to work side by side with our Vietnamese staff. The dental world truly answered our challenge to help these innocent children. Leading the way were many U.S.-Vietnam veterans, returning with the desire to directly help the Vietnamese people on the ground where they had once served. We have an example here today of a dentist from Alabama. His name is Dr. Bill Brown, but he served as a captain in the U.S. Army 1966, 1967 as a dust-off coordinator at Tay Ninh. And Bill and his wife Debbie have visited our dental program 12 times in the last 15 years. Bill and Debbie, can you just stand to be acknowledged? And really appreciate that. They're an example of numerous veterans that have returned to Vietnam to work with our program, and it's been an honor to serve with them. By 2012, more than 150,000 disadvantaged children have been provided with over $25 million worth of free care. Sustainable capacity building was completed when daily program management was turned over to our amazing East Meets West Vietnamese staff that same year. At this point, it has grown into one of the finest charity dental programs in the developing world. But more importantly, it serves as a model public health program for the entire country, helping the government train hundreds of rural Vietnamese dentists and dental nurses, thus ensuring a brighter future for generations to come. Based upon the goodwill earned through the relationships like the dental program, East Meets West was allowed to expand their development role to include rebuilding the country's medical and educational infrastructure, forming partners with USAID, Atlantic Philanthropics, the Bill Gates Foundation, the Ford Foundation, American Rotary Clubs, and other major outside groups. East Meets West constructed a 200-bed cardiovascular center in Hue, a 12-story English language center in Hanoi, an internal medicine building at Da Nang General Hospital. Eventually, they completed over 63 large construction projects, turning the management control immediately over to local authorities. East Meets West poured over $50 million worth of development aid money into the country, growing into one of the largest NGOs operating in Vietnam, helping over 400,000 people with access to clean water, 250,000 newborn children, housing for 100,000 students, educational scholarships for 55,000 students. In 1997, Pete Peterson was named the U.S. Ambassador to the American Embassy in Hanoi, and USAID opened an office there in 2000. In 2003, bilateral military relations also began to grow with the visit of the first Navy ship to Vietnam since 1975, and again with the USS Curtis Wilbur to the Da Nang port in 2004. In 2007, the U.S. Pacific Air Force conducted their first small medical exchange program in Hue. Due to its outstanding reputation, which had earned the respect of the U.S. Embassy and the Vietnam defense leaders, East Meets West dental staff was requested to partner directly with U.S. medical personnel to form joint military NGO treatment teams. Later that year, the USS Peleliu docked in Da Nang and conducted a much larger humanitarian operation with multiple medical, engineering, and community service projects. This enhanced U.S. East Meets West joint team, utilizing portable equipment at several schools, provided more than $150,000 to more than 750 local residents during the multiple-day event. Over the years, East Meets West relation with the U.S. Embassy has grown even stronger. We've been honored to partner with the Office of Defense Cooperation and the Office of Civil Affairs to conduct many multi-nation dental missions within Vietnam. Working arm in arm with other NGOs such as Project Hope, LDS Charities, Aloha Medical, we have shared personal equipment, supplies, resources during large-scale U.S. Navy Pacific Partnership visits of the 7th Fleet Naval Hospital ship USNS Mercy, starting in 2008 and most recently in July 2016. We also currently work with the U.S. Air Force during their Pacific Angel humanitarian assistance missions and the U.S. Army during their medical readiness exercises at various locations. The bond between Vietnam and U.S. continues to be broad-based and growing ever closer. Over the past 25 years, East Meets West was there to witness individual personal belief changes and several large, sweeping country transformations. Helping bridge the large gap between our countries really started with many small projects that treated the local people with basic human dignity and respect and demonstrated one of our best American qualities, compassion for our fellow man. In 2017, I will return to East Meets West with a group of volunteer dentists from Alaska, and we will all look forward to the 25th anniversary of normalized relations in the year 2020. Thanks for listening to this story, which was just one example of how U.S. NGO organizations have helped played an important role in bringing about the amazing metamorphosis of the Republic of Vietnam in the 21st century. And I'd like to thank Chancellor Christensen, Dean Booker, Dean Pohl, Dr. Price, and the University of Nebraska-Omaha for allowing me the professional honor to be a part of this important panel today.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Catherine Ko. This morning, I would like to tell a story of my Fulbright experience in Vietnam, relationship building between the United States and Vietnam through the Fulbright program. So I live in Vietnam for 10 months as a U.S. Fulbright scholar in 2014 to 2015. For people who do not know, let me describe to you the Fulbright program. The program's mission is to increase mutual understanding between the people of the U.S. and the people of other countries by means of educational and cultural exchange. So as part of my assignment, besides teaching international economics at my host institution in Ho Chi Minh City, I was also doing workshops in various universities in Vietnam. So I had the chance to travel from south in Ho Chi Minh, which is formerly Saigon, all the way to Hanoi up in the north. When I was there were 5 other U.S. scholars representing the U.S. in Vietnam. With us were 2 undergrad students doing research, One student was doing research on honeybees. Another student was doing research on an endangered species in Vietnam called the saola. So incredible research by these two undergrad students representing the US in Vietnam. With us were 10 other undergrad students who were English teaching assistants. So they were in Vietnam as teaching assistants in various schools around the country. I think you guys will be very proud of all the students. They represented the US very well. Fulbright program, I think, was achieved in terms of building people-to-people relationship between people in Vietnam and people here in the US. Most of us continue to do our work with colleagues in Vietnam. So in fact, myself, I will be going back to Hanoi next week to continue work with people in Vietnam. This morning, I'd like to describe to you a little bit about the economic achievements of Vietnam since 1986, when they started economic restructuring. I think for me, when I went there, it was very, very interesting to observe the significant economic achievements of Vietnam since that period of restructuring. So a little bit of data, since I'm an economist. So in 1990, the income level of Vietnam is roughly around 5% of the income levels of high-income countries. But in such a short time, this has gone up to about 13% of the income levels of the high-income countries. So I think this is significant improvement in economic terms. But I think more importantly, during this time period, the number of people living in poverty has dropped dramatically from something like 77% in 1992 to roughly about 12% in 2014. Life expectancy has also significantly increased. For example, for men, it went from 57 years in 1967 to roughly about 71 years now in 2014. So my point is that there is significant broad economic achievements during this time period. However, for some of the ethnic minority groups in Vietnam, poverty levels is still quite high. For one group, the level is as high as 93%. So this morning, we will describe to you a project that we are doing, which is an outgrowth of my Fulbright experience in Vietnam. 2015 marked 20 years of normalization of diplomatic relations between the two countries. I think in 2001, we signed a bilateral trade agreement with Vietnam. Vietnam is now one of the trading partners of the US. Close to a fifth of their exports is coming to us. Vietnam joined the WTO in 2007 and is now party to the Trans-Pacific Partnership, or the TPP. 10 other countries are part of the TPP. We have yet to ratify this agreement. In my view, TPP and other economic integration efforts and also political developments in the area will shape the next phase of US-Vietnam relation. I think, let me skip through most of the things that I wanted to describe this morning, and instead tell you a story, and then I pass on to my colleague. And the story is, maybe about 2 years ago, when I was living in Ho Chi Minh, I had the chance to meet a group of women in Ho Chi Minh, and I met them in a bazaar. And in the bazaar, they were selling traditionally made handicrafts, which I thought were very beautiful. So from that experience, we will describe to you a project that we have been working very hard for 2 years now to give our students the opportunity to work with ethnic minority women. And if everything falls in place, we hope we can bring some of those traditionally made handicrafts to campus next fall. So I turn to Dr. Holland to describe to you what is this project that UNO students will be working with the women back in Cao Bang province, which is in the northern part of Vietnam. Dr. Holland.
Thank you, Catherine. Good morning, everybody. When Dr. Ko came to me and asked me to be a part of this project that so inspired her when she was on her Fulbright, I was honored and equally enthused. The idea, from a marketing perspective, is that the women in Cao Bang province didn't have a distribution channel for these beautiful goods that they were producing. They didn't have an adequate marketing strategy for these goods to be valued at the price that would make it economically feasible for them to take time away from their duties farming and working with their families to produce these handicrafts. So our idea is that we wanted to put the great minds of UNO students to work on this problem. To do so, we were able to obtain a grant from a very generous donor who will help fund this project for the next couple of years. So we have a three-pronged approach. In the spring, Dr. Ko and I will be introducing a new course to students on international microenterprise development. The idea is that specifically impoverished rural people can become much more economically self-sufficient if they have opportunities to start small businesses in addition to their subsistence farming. So we already had the roots of this with these women with their traditional skills, fabric making and dyeing and embroidery and sewing. So we wanted to help them develop that into a business that could really improve the economic outcomes for the families and the children in this very remote, rural, impoverished area of Cao Bang province. So in the spring, we'll have students who will be researching international microenterprise, understand the cultural implications, the trade implications, the marketing implications, and our case study will be the women and their handmade products in Cao Bang province. From that class, we will select 8 students to move into the second prong of our approach. We will have the opportunity to take 8 students to go meet the women, work with local high school students in Cao Bang province, do the person-to-person interaction that is so important in developing the future relationships of peaceful trade and cultural exchange between our countries. And the students will meet with the women, understand the traditions and the history behind their handicrafts, and help produce the marketing materials that we will bring back here and then move into phase 3, which is to hopefully launch the distribution channel, send the profits back to the women, and launch their economic success for the future. So I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to help on this project.
So we've had some questions come in our direction. Kathy, you had made some reference to TPP, and obviously the ambassador did as well. Would you and Tien tell us a little bit more about why TPP is so important?
From the Vietnam perspective.
Thank you so much. I would like to thank the University of Nebraska for inviting the ambassadors and inviting me to be here. And I have the honor to join the panel. I think we greatly appreciate what Charles and Kathy and Holly has been doing. It is an examples of the work that thousands of American are now trying to do to heal the wound of the world and to build peace and to build the mutual beneficial and mutual respect relationships between Vietnam and the United States. We inherited a great support from the first generation of Americans who are veterans from the war, like Secretary Chuck Hagel, Senator Bob Kerrey, Secretary John Kerry, John McCain, Senator John McCain, who has supported very strongly the normalization of the relations. And they are among the people who the most and the first to help us to bring the relationship to this level. So I would like to thank deeply their contribution to the relations. So looking ahead, we have TPP as from our standpoint, we consider TPP as the most important trade agreements in a very many trade agreements that Vietnam is now involved in. We have not only TPP, but we have signed 12 other FTAs with different partners. But TPP is the most important part of the puzzle. When we look at the importance in economic implication of TPP, we connect 40% of the world GDP and over 30% of world trade, and including most important partners in East Asia and Pacific. But not only economic implication, but strategic implication. TPP is the pillar of the U.S. policy to East Asia. It is called rebalancing policy of the Obama administration to East Asia. And it will help to consolidate the relationships, the ties economically and strategically that the U.S. has in the region. And from the regional countries, we look at TPP as a way to maintain the U.S. influence, the U.S. presence in the region that help to create a balance of power. And the balance of power in East Asia will be instrumental for peace and security. And bilaterally, we look at that as a way to strengthen more the relation between Vietnam and the United States. And we will have very solid foundation for that, as the ambassador had said in his video. And we look forward to TPP as another milestones in our relation in the years to come. Thank you.
Recently, Secretary Kerry made a very nice speech, which I have asked my students to watch or listen. I'm teaching international economics right now. So in the speech, he made economic and strategic arguments for TPP, which Tian has also emphasized this morning. Let me talk a little bit about the economic benefits to TPP from the US perspective. There are a number, but let me focus on one. One has to do with the lowering of trade barriers for some of our trading partners. Currently, the tariff rates that we charge in the US on average is now very low. For some of our trading partners like Vietnam, for some of the items that we can export to them, the tariff rates are very high. So one of the components of the TPP is to bring those tariff rates down. So when I was teaching in Vietnam, I like students to look at data. So one of the assignment that they had is to look at the different tariff rates for different items that are being imported into Vietnam. So one of which is the motorbike. Because for people who have been to Vietnam, those motorbikes are all around the cities. So one student asked, the motorbike tariff rates is very high as 75%. So he was wondering why that is, right? Because if the tariff rate is high, then this means the price for the consumers is going to be also high. So he was wondering why this is the case. So what, in fact, the TPP will do will be for products like this, where the rates are high, is to bring them down, to give opportunities for exporters to sell to the local market. For Nebraska, I think one of the items that we care a lot about will be related to beef, will be related to soybean. So some of the tariff rates for those items will be lower if TPP is passed. And of course, there are a lot of other components, but this is just one example of the benefit of TPP. But as a trade economist, I also understand the flip side of the benefit, because anytime that you open up to more trade, there will be disruptions in the short term. So we need to be ready also for disruptions. In the same way that Vietnam, because the economy of Vietnam is less developed compared to ours, the disruptions on their side may actually be larger than the disruptions that this TPP will bring about. So I think it's just working together, understanding both benefits and potential dislocations that can come about due to opening up of markets with the agreement.
Thank you, Kathy. This is a different kind of question. This comes from one of our veterans who was in the infantry in Vietnam in 1969 and is asking the question, how would I be received in the North and in the South if I were to go back?
Is that on? If I could share a story, and Dr. Brown can verify this. When we went into the remote villages in central Vietnam as the first Americans back, every single time people came up, hugged us, smiled, invited us into their home, and welcomed us to have dinner or lunch with them. And after I saw that happen about 5 or 6 times, I didn't understand the very people that suffered the most would welcome the first American they saw. And finally, through a translator, I asked an elder village leader to please explain why he was so friendly. And he said, the Vietnamese people understand war. They have fought the Japanese, they have fought the French, they have fought the Chinese, they have fought the South, the North. The villagers just want to survive, but they understand the pain and suffering of war. What they saw, though, of those wars was that it was the American soldier that came into the village and lived beside them, provided security, provided medical, helped build roads, and took care of their children and offered them hope for a better life in the future. And this village elder said, that is why I smile when I see an American today. And we have seen so many veterans come back through East Meets West that were afraid to go into the villages until the first time they went there. And then it was just like a revelation of how the local people could forgive and see the bigger picture and look for hope for the future.
Not from the perspective of veterans, but I can tell you when we came in to Hanoi in our first week in the city, during one of our breaks, we went to Hoan Kiem Lake, which is in the center of the old quarter in Hanoi. So this is a lake, Con Park, in the city. So while we were sitting down, a group of us, Fulbrighters in Vietnam, 5 to 10 students just approached us and asked, can we practice our English with you? So the whole afternoon was spent, practicing English with a group of students in a beautiful lake in Hanoi. And I think the other thing that I'm wanting to share with you is the fact that the students that I met are very, very enthusiastic of learning new things. And one of my best story coming out of my workshop experience there is I gave a talk on how to conduct economic and business research at the American Center in Ho Chi Minh City. So when I was putting together the talk, I go, okay, I will be lucky if I get 30 to 50 students for this, quote unquote, boring talk, right? How to conduct economic and business research. So I was very surprised because I got about 150 students from area universities coming to my quote unquote boring talk on how to conduct economic and business research. So there's emphasis on how to do research in universities right now in Vietnam. The enthusiasm of welcoming new ideas, I think I felt a lot when I was there teaching and doing workshops all over.
Thank you. So from your personal experiences, give us a sense for what the way forward is in terms of our relationships, not just next year, but 5 or 10 years from now.
I can speak from the perspective of the healthcare system, and that moving forward, I think as more of the international community wants to assist, that we need to sit down initially with the local health directors and listen to what their needs are, not what we want to do for them. Listen to what they want and get their opinions and their buy-in from the very start. As soon as we partner together, then try to turn control over to the local people, because they have a better way of running it than we will, and they're going to run it more effectively. So it's really a true partnership. If we can assist, but then know when to stand back, it will be a great outcome. And especially there's been a lot of advances in medicine in Vietnam, and it's a very bright future.
Tien, would you share your thoughts?
Hello. So my projection to the next. For the next few years, the ambassador mentioned APEC 2017, and Vietnam we host the very important international gathering of economic leaders from East Asia country. And we hope that the President of the United States will visit Vietnam and we attend the APEC summit tentatively now for November. We look forward also to TPP when we have the next 2 years as a time for ratification and prepare for implementation of that agreements. The ambassador has mentioned a lot of issues, a lot of things that countries are planning to do in the future. We have the bilateral comprehensive partnerships based on 9 pillars, and we, in the coming years, plan to deepen and strengthen all the pillars, including people-to-people cooperations, and to resolve the war legacy issues such as dioxin, Agent Orange issues, including MIA issues. I would like to add that I myself participated as an officer at the Foreign Ministry to join force actions to look for MIA in Vietnam. And adding to the questions, the last question about the reception of the people between North and South, I can say that there's no difference between the people in North and South in the approach to American, because in the North we had the bombardment from the American during the war, and the suffering was tremendous. So when we and in MIA visits to villages and asking for their help to look for remains of U.S. soldiers, the first several visits was very difficult. I can remember in the 90s we still experienced some very difficult environment in the villages, both in the south and the central provinces of Vietnam. But later, the people get used to that, and they can understand, and they offer their support. And now, I think we have the great support from the people in that sense. So we look at that as the relationships is growing, and the new generation we look forward. And if we, as you said, if look at the history of Vietnam, when we have thousands of years of conflict with the northern neighbors, we have 100 of years under the French domination, and the experience with the U.S. is over 20 years, was over 20 years. So if we compare that, we can look forward to the great future of our relationships.
And I would like to add one more thing to that in terms of the future. The future is the youth, right? And the response from our students to this opportunity to learn about Vietnam and potentially visit Vietnam next summer has been tremendous. Students are very interested in learning more about Vietnam, and they're not coming from the same perspective of those of us who lived through the war period. They know about it, but they see instead the future, the bright future. And with education about trade, the importance in exchanging cultures, and of course the importance of education, involving the high school students with our university students, et cetera, that's the true path to the future. We know that people can make that connection, and that's the key to really building the path forward.
And on that note, I'd like to thank the panel members for their participation. This is excellent. And thank you so much for your wonderful questions. Have a great day. We have many more programs to go. We'll be back at 10 o'clock for the next session. Good day.